Calling the meeting to order at 7:03. I will pull up the agenda in a minute. We don't need to vote, right?
No.
Okay.
To vote to what?
To call the meeting to order? No.
No.
Nope, you just call it to order.
You're done.
This is why I can't take a month off, people. I forget. I want to start with public comment. So I see Carol and I think there may be some others. Is anybody wanting to contribute, to give us ideas or thoughts?
Yeah, actually, definitely this time. This is Carol Zubek from 294 Main Street. And some of you noticed the Facebook post I did for offering to pick up pumpkins to compost. Oh my gosh, it was an incredible response. I got over 150 pumpkins, and I'm not even counting the small ones. So fortunately, I was able to share. We have a huge compost at the retreat center, but also because I've been expanding it, the Giving Garden itself has been expanding their compost. So they were able to take, because I didn't want to say no to people. So I got more volunteers, and the cutest thing happened. After a while, I asked people if they could drop it off at the First Baptist Church property so that I could pick it up later. And I went to pick some up. There were probably about 15 there, and a father and daughter, a really adorable little girl. The father are walking, and the father comes over and goes, she wants to count the pumpkins. It was just so cute how she was. And I warned him that I was going to take them away. So he took the cue and he said, oh, she's taking them away to grow even more pumpkins. But my key thing is, like, over the summer, for sure, I'd like to dive in to help figure out channeling this enthusiasm, including, I was surprised how many were not carved. And me and a few other people were like, there's some healthy pumpkins here. And probably just 5% we grabbed, and we took out the pumpkin seeds and we made soups out of it. And it was wonderful, and it's incredibly nutritious. So that could be part of the whole project. Like I said, we need to just be enthused with the enthusiasm. And then another idea that I've mentioned to a number of people who have used to have students at the school, and they said, oh, my kids would have loved to have done that. I've noticed that there's a lot of really messy cardboard at people for their recycling. It's a pain. It's really a pain to break it all down and do it right. But in the research I've done, the managers at the transfer stations have literally pointed to these piles that they say come in from certain companies that are bundled really nicely. And they said they were literally able to get higher prices for it. So we can have a win-win for the town. We can reduce the cost of them processing it. We can have kids, kids could jump in and do it. And to throw another nice little twist to it is perhaps we can encourage the parents to reward the kids with a gift certificate to a local restaurant, and use that also as an opportunity to remind them, hey, if you don't want the plastic utensils, don't request it. So it just, and like I said, I've mentioned to a handful of people that have kids in their 20s, like, oh yeah, definitely. So just toss that out there as well.
That's great. And that's really sort of validating. And, it's exciting, I think, when we think about, how to, like you said, sort of capitalize on that enthusiasm, because I feel like, it's something we've been working on for a little while. And I'm surprised there were 150 pumpkins after we collected a whole truckload, the first weekend after Halloween. Thank you.
Yeah, I did like 2 collections into the first week of December.
That's great.
Yeah, Myra, on that front, I wonder if we might want to consider putting off the Black Earth or doing 2, because I know we're not ready to get rid of our pumpkin on the 1st of November, right? We like to have it around all the way through Thanksgiving, and then we're ready to get rid of it. So I don't know if maybe the idea with Black Earth would be to do 2, Carol, if we didn't decide to kind of go with your idea of kind of leveraging it for a different kind of activity, but for Black Earth, I would bet that we would have kind of enough to warrant doing it both right after Halloween for the families that want to get rid of them then, and then again after Thanksgiving.
I bet you if we do it 2 Black Earth, I'll still have plenty left.
You'll still have some, yep.
Yeah, so we have the same, our carved ones went with the Black Earth collection, and then we had a bunch of non-carved, smaller sugar pumpkins that we took the guts and made dog treats with, but those just went out with our Black Earth. But I bet you, and those were closer to Thanksgiving, so and probably could support 2 collections.
And even teach people to take their pumpkins and how they could cut them up and bury it in their yards, in their gardens, and so like there's a lot involved, but good, in the good way.
That's great, thank you. Any other public comment? And then we'll move on to our agenda. We have a lot of agenda items today. I think some of them will be pretty quick, but I had those extra time to collect some ideas, and thank you to Julie and to Dan also for contributing. So the first step is to approve the minutes. Robin sent out corrected minutes with Melissa's feedback. Any other comments or response to her?
No comments from me.
So, so we can make a motion to approve the minutes. I'll make the motion. Yeah, I'll make the motion. So Dan seconded.
Second.
All right, I'm gonna go by my screen, which is Joe.
I'm gonna abstain. I wasn't at the meeting.
Julie?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Susie?
I'm also going to abstain because I was not at the meeting.
Sean?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Great. Thank you. So the next thing I want to talk about, and this actually may not, I know I wrote vote anticipated when I was imagining this. I wanted to talk a little bit about the solicitation of new members. And so we have 4 of us who are citizen representatives whose term is up in March. I think we're expecting to have a couple of people who don't plan to apply and a couple of people who may reapply. But I think I just wanted to take a minute to make sure that we were soliciting appropriately. And if there's any other information that we should share about what it's like to be on the committee. And so I'm wondering if we had a little bit of a discussion about that. And then, like I said, I don't think we need to vote on it necessarily, because Sherry tells me that it's actually just sort of a very general summary of the committee that's on the formal sort of town solicitation for volunteers site. But I do think we should think about how do we want to publicize and how do we want to get the word out that there is an opportunity to contribute. So I don't know if anybody wants to, for those of you, and I'm thinking if I can put Melissa, Dan, and Sean on the spot. Is this sort of, is this committee like you were expecting? Do you feel like any other information would have been helpful, since you guys were the ones to apply most recently? And should we think about anything differently in terms of how we market and how we recruit people to join us?
So I'll, if you don't mind, I'll start.
Great.
And I received an email for solicitation, and I've always been involved in environment and climate change and that type of stuff. And so I felt at this point in time, I had the time. I'm retired, and I could put my time in and do a proper job. The problem that I had once I signed up was it was really unclear. I mean, I did a lot of research and you know, as to, you know, the mission statement and, you know, what we're all about and all of that type of stuff. But I was unclear as to what my role was going to be in this whole thing. And, you know, so maybe when we do solicitate type of things, you kind of lay out what's expected of you type of thing.
That's great. That's really good feedback. And honestly, that, you know, I looked at that. We have a solicitation for students that's different than this. It doesn't go sort of on the same website, and it has a little bit. We have a little bit more of that information about sort of what really is the role of the committee. And so I think we can, at least when we publicize, like in the item or other ways that we might send out, I think that's great feedback. I think we have some language we could borrow from.
Well, one more thing, just so you understand, yeah. It wasn't. I understood the role of the committee. I didn't understand my role within the committee.
Yeah, I would say that it hasn't really been surprising for me since I've been attending the meetings for a while.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it definitely would be helpful in the solicitation to, going off of what Dan was saying, kind of give more information on what's expected, like how much time would be required of this person. You know, you say that meetings are the second Thursday of every month, but maybe we can mention like, and, you know, you'll be involved in a subcommittee, so it may require more time or something like that.
I agree fully with that, and thinking of the way Dan put that, that distinction between knowing what the committee does, but not necessarily knowing what a member of the committee does, I think is spot on. I don't think it was horribly surprising to me, but I do think we could add a little bit to this brief description to mention something about availability for subcommittee meetings, other tasks. I don't know what the average amount of time people spend on the committee is, but you know, if we had some range of, you know, 3 to 5 hours a month or something like that, then it might be useful to people.
That's great. And Robin, I mean, it's been a while, but do you have other thoughts about, you know, thinking back about what, you know, your experience was? You were one of the founding members.
No. I don't know. I mean, I guess it would be, you know, like every year we do, you know, have officers. So, you know, there could be more expectations on if you're a, you know, a chair, vice chair, or secretary. And of course, those positions can be held by current members or incoming members, I suppose. Yeah, I guess the expectation that not only you're attending meetings, but there is a public advocacy that you may be doing in addition to it, I guess. You know, I have to think about it. I hadn't.
And then I feel like Dan's question brings up something that we have struggled with in our conversations in the past around potentially trying to do too many things, getting spread thin. How do we get something accomplished, right? Like, it's a relatively new committee that's still trying to figure out kind of how to operate and how to get things done. I think the subcommittee creation, the intent there was to be able to create a different way, or a way outside of the monthly meetings to kind of move things forward. But I think we're only a couple of months into having those, right? So I think calling out the involvement in subcommittees and the expectation of, like, and I know I talked about this from a school committee perspective, like that's where the work gets done. And I think the more we leverage that, the more the committee will feel like they're accomplishing things. And I do think we continue, you know, again, I haven't been all that involved in the last couple of months, but I think it's hard because there's so many things the committee could focus on, which makes it really hard to get anything done. And so to me, that's more of a challenge. And Dan, I don't know that necessarily fits with kind of what you've been feeling, but I do think we could be clearer in this of the monthly meetings, getting involved in subcommittee meetings, giving some examples of what those subcommittees look like, so people know, like, hey, these are the kinds of things that you might be able to get involved in, and that there's, you know, in order to kind of make progress, we have to kind of expect that there's gonna be some work done kind of outside of the monthly meetings.
Thanks, Susie. I totally agree, and I think that also has been a learning for all of us as we've gone through. I mean, it's been 2.5 years, I think, for me, and it definitely has been something that, you know, and the balance. And I also feel like it's nice that it's sort of flexible in the time, but I do really want to be able to push forward because there are so many things, and I feel like we're building some momentum in a number of different places, and that we want to keep that up.
Do we need to say anything? Like, I remember your first meeting, Myra, where you're like, well, I don't really like work in environment. And like, people do not have to have any expertise in environment to do this. And I don't want people to not apply because they think they don't have some sort of a credential. So I don't know how you say that, except that, you know, skills and passion, or, you know, idea. I mean, something maybe like that too.
Although, Julie, when we look back to this past year when we were able to expand, I think the applications we got demonstrated that people knew that there didn't,
That's
you know,
true.
We did get so I think either because people listen to our recordings or ask questions, I think it's known that there's no idealized candidate. We love the variety because that's what everyone brings, different skill sets.
Right. Yeah.
It's great. So I'm happy to take a stab at writing up a solicitation based on so Julie, I don't know if you know, I don't know if we can change, this is right off the website.
I'm looking at what other people are on the website. There's a whole range of things. So I really think it's on us.
Okay. So I can write something up with using the student solicitation as a model and incorporating these components. Do people have thoughts of other ways to get the word out? So I mean, I think it was really impressive when our last solicitation of people, we got a lot of volunteers. I know some boards now, like I sit on the master plan advisory group. There was a lot of interest in that, and it's a pretty diverse group. It was really sort of eye-opening and inspiring to see people that I had never known in town before. But I don't know, do we have sort of interesting ideas other than publishing in the item and publishing on the town and using Facebook to get the word out in different parts of town that this is an opportunity?
I mean, it certainly could be posted on the board, the information boards that's at the lake and downtown, potentially.
That's a good idea because, this is the time of year that all committees are open. So It could be a more general and then list all the committees that are open. Yeah, write that down, Robin. We can ask Jen to do that.
Yeah, and so there's again, there's social media in Wakefield. I know that there's a couple of groups that get together and they kind of communicate either by email or on social media, and I can send you, at least what I know that's available within Wakefield, and it's kind of it's an open forum, and there's a lot of people that, they sell things and they read things and they comment on things and so forth and so on. But I don't have the name of those groups on the top of my head, but I'll send them to you, Maya.
Great, thank you. And I'll send it out. And if you all have people in town that that you think might be interested, the applications are due on March 31st, and they'll be selected by the town council a couple of weeks after that. I think we'll have potentially a meeting where we can talk about what we did last time is we talked about the skills that we thought would be really helpful for the committee, and then sort of made that recommendation to the town council based on that. But it'll probably be mostly the three of you who wouldn't be, and you all can decide, I think, make recommendations based on what you think would be the most helpful in the next phase. All right, I believe Dan, are you ready? I'm gonna Dan, first of all, I just want to do a public sort of thank you to you, Dan. Dan's drafted a letter which I sent out not nearly in enough time for you all to really read and absorb. And then also has been thinking about a logo and helping us think in sort of our identity. And so I want to talk about both of these things together. And you'll see the draft logo that he put up when I show my screen now with the letter. So Dan, unless you want me to do more of an introduction, I'm just going to hand it over to you. Take it away.
Okay. So during the last meeting, there was a letter from the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light sent to the Northeast Regional Vocational High School group as to how they can interface with what's going on with the new school up there. And I guess we're also looking at a new school here in the town of Wakefield as well. And so Maya had, in that meeting, had asked somebody to kind of draft the letter, and I said I would. And so I did. And in drafting the letter, one of the things that I noticed is and I got sent the Wakefield gas and light letter as well, so I could understand a little bit more of what I needed to do. And so I drafted the letter, and mainly what I tried to do, and again, this is my ignorance in really the role of my job and how I interact or interface with this committee as well as many other committees that are going on. So I've been kind of quiet, not really saying anything to try to understand all of that. But what I felt in this letter, and from the letter that the Gas and Light Department sent, is that I wanted to introduce the ESC to the various departments because I'm not sure how well they know us. And the other thing is I wanted to keep it short because these people are inundated with stuff to do. And so I kind of made the intro kind of short saying, this is what we do. And there'll be more in the future and so forth and so on. And kind of presented some of the things that we might, have some input on. In the building projects for the two schools, as well as in general Wakefield, and what's going on in Wakefield and so forth and so on. And so I don't know if any of you had a chance to read the letter or not, but some of the items that I saw were optimize site potential, minimize non-renewable energy consumption, using environmentally preferable green supply chain, protect and conserve non-potable and potable water, enhance indoor and environment quality, and from a student and from a teacher standpoint of view, and optimize operational maintenance costs and practices. So these are being addressed in one way or another through various Wakefield departments, but I think we're the ones that can kind of consolidate all of that and do some research as to what makes sense within budget constraints, what makes sense for the type of buildings that are going on, what makes sense within our mission statement and goals, as well as to try to help these people do their job, to understand what their job is, and to help them do that job as it relates to environmental sustainability. So I wrote the letter, and in writing the letter, I'm saying, well, I saw the gas and light letterhead logo and stuff like that, and I'm saying, well, we don't have one. And I've been a graphic artist in the past and so forth, and so I took my shot at it, and I don't know if you want to show that, Maya. Oh, you did. Yeah, there it is. And so, what do you think? I mean, I can do this. I can change this in minutes and stuff like that. So if you like it, you like it. If you don't, tell me what you don't like, and I can change it, and we can play it around, play around with it a little bit more.
I'll start. I love it. My only question is, do we need to include, like, I think the current town has like the gazebo as like the symbol of like we are a town entity. And so that's the only question I don't know. And whether
I think we just need to reach out to Jen. We may be able to use both. I love it. She's kind of the brand police. So I think we send this to her, if we all like it as a committee, we send it to her and say, can we incorporate something like this? You know, and if we do, we need to use, she still might want us to use the fonts and everything that the town uses, but.
That's what I was thinking. We might be able to get away with just using the fonts and the colors.
Yep.
And then be able to use the tree with the roots, Dan, as like instead of the gazebo, like that's our graphic element. But I'd like to hope that if we could get in line with fonts and colors, that they might be open to the idea of the tree staying. I really like it.
I love it.
I like it as well, and I think echoing is just the tying to the town, and maybe even just the keeping it the way it is. You know, I'm sure Jen will have some font suggestions, but maybe the gazebo as like a watermark centered behind, you know, the EFC, like just the behind everything. So you have that continuity of the town and the relationship to the town.
Yeah, we could put like a little gazebo like back behind the tree or something.
Yeah.
There's tree gazebo.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll play around with that. I don't.
Dan, I was going to say, you know, the public schools doesn't use the gazebo, and they're still very clearly a Wakefield entity. So, I guess maybe.
We did put that in place though before Jen existed. Oh. Right, there was no brand police when that was developed.
Okay.
I think we take. I mean, sorry. I think we. Oh my goodness, you guys. I think
it's all right, Susie. You've had a couple weeks. It's all right.
Oh my gosh. Give it to Jen and let her do her magic.
Yeah, exactly.
Dan, because she's going to be picky. Because she is the brand police, like that is kind of her job. But I think you've got like the elements of what you think is important. And I think we all agree, like, let her take it and see what she can do with it. She can decide if we need a gazebo or not, whatever.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different things that happen here. Number one, most companies have very specific colors and fonts and images and so forth and so on. And I never really saw that in Wakefield. I just saw kind of a few things here and there, and they were quite different. Certainly a gazebo could be in the background of the tree and so forth and so on. The colors could be different. The fonts can be different. I don't know who this person is you're talking about that does the branding and so forth. So maybe, so we don't spend too much time on this, give me her name and let her and I work together, and then we'll represent it to the committee.
That's great. I'll introduce you, Dan. It's Jen McDonald. She came a couple of meetings ago when we were talking about idling, and sort of she was the person who sort of has, she does the graphics for the town, and she's wonderful. But I will introduce you by email.
Okay.
And then just
okay. Now, does anybody have any questions about the letter in and of itself?
I haven't read it, but I do want to actually go something into the header, and I figured out why you did it, but I'm wondering if it's actually true. Under titles, Mary is not vice chair, although I do see our website claims that she is. So I don't know. We'll have to bring that up. Website. That's what I know. I realized that you did that, so we should probably let Jen know to update that so it's not confusing. I hadn't noticed until you used it, but I get it. Why?
Yeah, and again, if there's any other, issues that you see in that, just let me know.
Yep.
And that's why it hasn't been published. I sent it to Maya, and for content and for layout and all of that type of stuff. So again, like the logo, this is kind of fluid.
Yeah, great.
And if anybody wants to say anything else in it, then let me know as well. Or let Maya know.
I had two just on the one is the members up top. I'm just wondering if we reduce the font size so that it's not. It seems unbalanced with the logo.
Or maybe make it a sidebar since there's so many of us.
Yeah.
Maybe it goes down the left side or something.
Yeah.
But Jennifer, Jen and Dan can figure that out. You guys are the graphics.
That just seems unbalanced to me. And then just content-wise, and it's around the optimizing the sites and potential. And I know that there's been a fair amount of discussion around the impact of the school taking and building on the wetlands that surround there. And I know that, the proposal has, if they utilize some of the wetland, they have to replace it somewhere else. And so just, I don't know if that's covered under the optimize the site potential, but just, around protecting the protected wetlands and the natural resources that are, surround the school, which, we have, there's Breakheart there. I know that the school doesn't impact that from that perspective, but there's still quite a few trail systems that are on, the Vokes land that won't be there after the building project if it goes forward. So just something that I had been thinking about around the optimized site potential.
So just one question, is this just for the vocational school? Or you said the letter is going to be used for other purposes?
Well, again, yes, it is specifically for the vocational school. But, again, I'm ignorant about what's going on with the Wakefield High School in and of itself, the Memorial Wakefield High School. As far as I know, that there is talk about doing something, but I don't know if there's anything concrete. And what committee is involved with that?
There's something concrete. it's
and there's there's 2 active groups. So yeah, we know the players.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Get this letter in front of them.
Yeah.
Or a version of this letter.
Yeah, and I know Robin has been very actively involved in the when there's been sort of public and sort of invited feedback into the high school design. There was a meeting, when was it, Tom, with the utility and the high school designers, which I think people felt pretty good about, around sort of making sure that I think that the meeting ended with the designer saying, I think we've decided to be all electric, which I think is good news on the environmental side. And so I think that there is a process. I think that ESC as a body hasn't been necessarily included or figured out how to position ourselves. And so I think that's the goal of a letter like this, is to share what we can do.
So I haven't had the chance to read the letter, so I don't know, but it sounds like this is a great first draft for us to look at and offer comments, maybe offline. Just do we?
Right. Yeah. So the other thing that can happen
sort of,
is
a way to get in touch with us somewhere in the letter.
So the committee does have a email address, so we should add that.
Okay.
I believe it's esc@wakefield.ma.us.
Yes, it is. That makes me think, I'm not sure who checks that, but I think it might go to Rob.
I believe it goes to you, because it did for Rob.
Okay.
It may also go to the clerk's office, but I believe it's forwarded to you.
Okay, great.
Shows how often people contact us.
Okay.
So I think, there's a little bit of a time issue here, I think, with the Voke, right? You all know that we have a vote in 2 weeks on the Voke design. That doesn't mean it's over. So Julie, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, I sat in on their session last night. They've been holding hour-long sessions. Robin, you were on, right?
I was.
I was only on for half an hour, because then I jumped to something else. But I did hear them say, if I'm not mistaken, that at least for one of my big concerns with the Voke is that they want to use natural gas, which we're supposed to be net zero by 2050, and this is a building that is going to be viable long after 2050. And so actually placing a building in Wakefield that's still using natural gas is probably the biggest climate impact that we're facing in this town. But they did say pretty clearly last night, if I heard correctly, that they have not made any decisions, and that they are in active discussions with our light department, which does want to make it an all-electric building. And that their design is not final. So I think
the design is absolutely not final. I mean, that's
okay. Robin, you know way more about process.
At this point of the project, they are at a schematic level. They have set a total dollar. That is what the vote would have been locked, but decisions on fuel are not finalized. So yes, he did. I believe it was the architect from DRA said that they are looking to talk about fuel and stuff like that. So it had a different tone than we thought it had before. Which is
yeah, I think I don't know whether we've turned them, but they're at least singing a different tune right now.
Yes.
So we've already had a lot of good influence, and something like this will just reinforce it. This is huge.
Yes, and he noted, because the woman from Melrose was taken before my question, was that they are looking to talk to the local environmental committees. So somebody let them know that we existed, and other ones that are impacted.
So I almost wonder, I mean, I know we want to look through this. And I think on the fuel side, instead of saying, you know, minimize non-renewable, I think my vote would be to say, you know, fully electrify.
You may not, you have to be careful about the fully electric. In a vote tech, I don't know if all of their shops are as achievable to be gas free, which is why they have gas now, is because some of the shops are still gas focused, you know, so it's a heating that we can influence. I don't know if they could go all electric.
Yeah, the utilities letter specifically called out the space heating and water heating for the building consumption, as you know, wanting to move that into a heat pump. And we're open, you know, utilities open to either, you know, air source heat pump, which is more common, or potentially ground source, you know, less common and potentially, you know, outside of budget. But, you know, either one of those two options would be.
So what if we said something? What if we said something like, instead of minimize, like optimize, climate friendly or clean energy resources, and then put examples like space, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Call it
out. Electric heat.
I would say I would say i.e. Air source, or air source and or, you know, ground source, air and or ground source heat pump type
and solar
technology. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Well, so I've been
that would be more.
Go ahead, Dan. Yeah, because tell us what you were thinking.
I kind of agree. And I've been doing a little bit of research, and I sent Meyer some of the topics I'd like to talk about tonight. But you're right. So, but there's also hybrid heat recovery, air to water chillers with backup boilers, and there's many different ways of approaching this. And I guess it's still an open issue, but I have some ideas as to really what to do about this. And I used to be a facilities manager. And one of the things that we did was we went with Honeywell on a lot of different things, and they've come out with some amazing things lately as it relates to HVAC and just energy in general within buildings and so forth and so on. And I'm not ready to talk to this at this point in time, but it also seems that everything is still up in the air. But again, this is one of my key topics that I'm going to be addressing to the regional school committees, and it involves heat. And let me just get to where I am going here. Hold on. It involves what I'm considering at this point in time. Again, supply chain. Non-potable and potable water sources, HVAC and energy, as well as cyber secure communications, which is telephone, in-house ISP, internet services, and wireless services that do not conflict with the FCCE rate type stuff. So again, I'm going to be issuing some communications and stuff, which involves some of what you're talking about, Tom.
Awesome. Yeah, and I don't know if it's for this letter. It's, you know, it ties in part and parcel, but I do want to share that the utility, you know, both with the Wakefield High School, the Voc, especially the Voc, and then the Woodville, we have 3 large load buildings in a very small area. And we have a very unique opportunity having a municipal utility in these 3 buildings. The utility is very interested in, they're calling it an energy park, but building an energy park that services all 3 of these school systems, and being a, you know, think of this as a micro grid, and having an educational component, especially for the Voc. You know, the Voc is training the future students that are going to be taking care of our infrastructure in this world, you know, whether it's transmission, transformers, you know, up and coming new renewable technologies, tried and true stuff. So by having an energy park that ties into those vocational skills, I think we really have an opportunity to do there, to you know, excel that, those skill sets. Part of that energy park would have, you know, generation, backup generation, both renewable from, say, solar, a backup generation that would be natural gas, that we can have efficiencies. So all 3 schools are proposing, whether they're diesel or natural gas backup generators, so efficiencies by having only one that services all 3 schools. Ties into resiliency. So being on a microgrid, if these schools are designated as, you know, shelter in place type areas, places that, you know, if there's ever a regional type emergency that we need to, you know, have people have shelter, having it off of the larger grid and being able to self-sustain within that microgrid, you know, again, just opportunities that we probably won't have again, where, you know, almost the 2 larger buildings are being rebuilt in the next 5 years. So it's just something that to kind of think about.
And then, Tom, the other thing that came up in that conversation was also the utility thinking that there might be a way to sort of leverage grant funds for some of that, because it's really sort of innovation and sort of, it is sort of all coming together. And so, you know, to the extent that some of these are more expensive and thinking about in terms of the buildings, and we all know that $317 million is already a very large number. You know, I just thinking too there, like, you know, with innovation comes opportunity in many of these areas. And so
absolutely, yeah, you can tie the grants to, you know, the resiliency piece, the storage and production, with that, the educational components. And quite frankly, some of the infrastructure needs to be built anyways. You know, with these new school systems coming online, you know, some of the stuff is going to be built anyways. So by centralizing it, and kind of sharing those resources, you gain those scale efficiencies, right? So there is definitely potential for cost savings as well. And those oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm feeling like we need to move on a little bit just because we have other things to talk about. But I'm wondering whether, so we do need, I think, as a committee to give some endorsement to the sort of ideas that Dan is presenting. Do people feel like we can vote on that? You know, because he will be speaking for the committee. I think the idea is that he'll be communicating not as a private citizen, but for the ESC. And so do we feel like we can vote on that now, or do we feel like we want to see a revision of it before voting on it? And I would say if we feel like we can vote on it, what I hear people saying is maybe some revision work, and I would encourage Dan and Robin especially to get together, since Robin has been very involved in the discussions to date.
I would propose, since, you know, time is of the essence here, and, you know, we won't have another meeting till February, that I would be okay with, you know, the heart and intent of the letter, I think, is captured. The changing of certain things here and there is perfectly fine. And then, a final draft being, approved by you, Myra, would be fine by me. I'd be okay with voting going forward with a letter like this in this
Tom,
spirit.
is that a motion?
It can be. I was just having discussion, but if we want to move forward, if there's no further discussion, if that's what the fellow committee members feel.
Yeah, I would agree with Tom. I mean, I think the intent is pretty clear. I don't think we need to dive too deep into details. I think those can be worked out later as discussions continue.
Great. So is that a second?
Second.
So what we're voting on is to give sort of Dan, say, go forth, represent us in this way, and that we're sort of comfortable with those sort of outlines.
Yeah, okay. So again, the letter was drafted without specifics. It was just kind of an introduction and then saying, these are some of the things we're thinking about. We'll talk about specific details a little bit later.
Yeah, I think it's important them to just know we're here and we care and we want to be at the table.
Yep.
All right.
And I think this letter does that. It's great.
All right. I think we do need to vote. So Tom.
Yes.
Dan. You're on mute, but I'm going to think that's a yes.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so thank you. That was great. Really, and thank you so much, Dan, for doing all that work. It's really awesome.
More to come.
All right, so the next item on our agenda is we wanted to bring up this idea, Julie. This is the recycling and energy drive. So the one other thing that I sent out was this sort of summary of an email that was sent by the office of Kate Lipper-Garabedian to Steve Mayo, which was then forwarded to Julie, with a desire to do a recycling event on May 14th. And so I think what they're interested in, and I think this is the Massachusetts House, a number of members have done these types of community recycling events. And so I think the advantage is it gives us sort of some organizing assistance by Kate Lipper-Garabedian's office, and also sort of trying to boost some awareness and some engagement. To me, it feels a little bit like the Big Purge comes back, so that's pretty exciting. But I don't know, Julie, if there's anything else that you want to add. I think we were just...
No, I mean, it feels like the Big Purge. For those who don't know what that was, right before COVID hit, we had this huge event set up where we were going to have a central location at the high school, and we were going to recycle or reuse anything we could think of, scrap metal, styrofoam, cardboard. And then all around town, we had these little mini events set up, and like there was going to be somebody teaching beekeeping and somebody doing a gold buyback. And so we had this, and then the whole thing fell apart because of COVID. So I think we can make this as big or as little as we want it to be. I mean, we had talked about a spring cleanup day. We can make it part of that too. Or we can just kind of stick to recycling and energy. And Joe, I don't know whether you know more. I assume Anne's kind of been involved in this too, you guys.
A little bit. I saw it kind of the same way you did, whereas like the reincarnation of the Big Purge event. So obviously you all know my group will help however we can, and I think we can get pretty creative with this one, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the very least, we try to get the styrofoam back, we've got cardboard recycling now. We can promote that. Yeah. So I just think we need one person to kind of
compost, right? Like a central place that people could bring compost and learn more about Black Earth. Mm-hmm. I would love to see us do those hard plastics that are really hard to recycle. Like the thing, I know Melrose has some kind of special place where you can drop off the non-standard plastics that just aren't one of the ones that we're able to recycle in our. I just don't know how you actually do it exactly. I don't know if it's through TerraCycle or some other program, but I would love to see us do some of that, you know, gift cards. Like if you have gift cards, there's like a
through TerraCycle.
Is it TerraCycle? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of specialty. The thing is like, we'd want to get that word out now so that people are like holding on to their stuff, knowing that this event is coming. So we need to figure that out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I'd like to see in there as well on the plastics, just to tie on the you know, just the plastic bags. You know, I think we had great success with the you know, bags to benches. And maybe this is even a segue to figuring out how we have a more permanent program for those bags as well. But at least for this event, you know, being able to recycle those as well.
Yeah, we shouldn't be using those bags anymore.
They still come. I mean, they still come.
I mean, it's those. I have a whole bag. It's, you know, it's bread bags. It's the
cereal bags.
Yeah, it's not the bags from town, because I don't have any of those bags anymore. But because I had that initial reaction too, but I'm like, wait a minute, no, it's all the other plastic stuff that we get.
Yeah. You know, packaged material that have, you know, that type of plastic around it as well.
Yeah, like the shipping bags and stuff like that. Yeah.
Bubble wrap.
I mean, I think we can make this as big as we want to make it. I just, you know, it's a great spring event to start focusing on, though it's already January. We just need probably somebody to designate it from ESC to sit down and just move this thing forward. And then you know, the nice thing is that the town is, the big purge was kind of came up through a citizen group. And so we had separate emails and separate websites. I think all of this we can do through the town, which is kind of nice. We don't have to set up a whole new communications system.
And I get the sense that there's a company, Greens, and it was in that email.
Go Green Team Junk.
Yeah, who has, you know, has people who do this. And so I think it's, you know, that's like is another sort of
right.
So I mean, I put vote anticipated on here because I think that if we're going to sort of endorse this again as a committee, I don't know why we wouldn't, but then also I think the question is there anybody who feels like they could coordinate it for the committee? I'm happy to help, but it would be you know, it would be good if there was an additional person as well.
Oh, yeah, Maya, I'll help you out on that. But the other thing I'm thinking, you know, instead of having it as a one-time event, because really all of the stuff that's involved with sustainability and so forth fundamentally comes down to the individual. It comes down to the public, to the person, and so forth and so on. And so along with this event or other events like this, I ought to think we have an educational component that spreads the word between individuals that this is what's needed to be done on a day-by-day basis, not on a event-by-event basis.
I totally agree. And I love the idea of like tying in Black Earth. I mean, to me, that, you know, Black Earth was a game changer for me when I signed up, you know, a couple of years ago, just in terms of I feel like we no longer have trash. But I agree. And Dan, if you had sort of other ideas, I mean, it is about changing behavior on a lot of things, right? And so opening
maybe we spend April, which is Earth Month, kind of doing the education leading up into this.
Yeah, I need to think more about this and how best to do it and so forth and so on. Again, you know, part of my career was formal and informal education. And so I just need to think more about this. But I think it ought to be an element of what we do.
And at some point, I just want to hear your whole career because I feel like you've done so many interesting things that are different but connected.
I do like the idea of April being, I think we will be hard pressed to plan an Earth Day event and this. And Earth Day, always, the timing is always crazy, not crazy, but it's always during April vacation, which ends up being somewhat problematic for families. So I kind of like that idea of focus on education. We'd need to get the word out with whatever this event is going to look like to start having people kind of save things and hold on to things, knowing that they're going to be able to get rid of them at this event. But I do kind of like that idea of focusing on education in April and then getting around an event, because I just think we won't be able to pull off two. Unless we do like a cleanup event. I know there was some discussion about a cleanup event. Maybe that's what happens in April as part of Earth Day.
And I did talk. I did talk to Maggie Schaefer, who's the person who organized the Warrior cleanup, and she's thinking about she was going to connect with Sophie, who I don't think has joined us, around whether an Earth Day event makes sense. I did tell her about May 14th too, so I can follow up with her and see what she's thinking. But they were the ones who did the one around the Woodville and the high school, which I think was pretty successful when they, it was sort of half ESC because Sophie Brown contributed.
I can help out with this event or the cleanup, either one.
Great, thanks. So do we need to vote on this to sort of say this is an ESC initiative, or do we feel comfortable with that? With a sort of subcommittee kind of work?
I think we just put it into the subcommittee work.
Okay. Great. All right, so we have a long list of updates. I'm wondering, Julie, if you want to start with the green community, how are we doing? I know the fleet policies are through, right?
Yep. Honestly, I don't have much of an update. We're still waiting on the baseline. The good news is that they are now not only taking applications on a rolling basis, but awarding on a rolling basis.
Great.
So as soon as we're ready, there should not be much of a delay. I'm meeting with Jen Calais tomorrow. Maybe we can get an update. I'll get more of an update from her, but we should still be on track for that.
Great. Plastic and styrofoam. I don't know. I will say personally, we had takeout from Red Sugar here in town today, and I was thrilled that there was no styrofoam. We had breakfast at Early Harvest Diner earlier this week, or after their good Girl Scout cookie booth, and I was thrilled that there was no straw in my water. So I'm definitely seeing some changes since January 1st, and so I don't know if Melissa or Julie have sort of the official word other than
Melissa, you can start.
Yeah, so the bylaws have officially started as of January 1st. People have to comply. And the town has received a good number of waivers from different businesses. There was 12 restaurants that submitted waivers, as well as the Wakefield Public Schools and the Metropolitan School. So most of the reasons for the waivers had to do with just using up their current stock of materials. And then also a number of them mentioned supply chain issues. But I did see that a good number of them were, going to comply within the next 6 months. So that was a good thing. There was only a few of them that were kind of resistant to complying at all. But I don't think that I feel like there's a lot of restaurants that haven't really paid attention to this whole thing and are kind of flying under the radar. So I have experienced a lot of different restaurants that are still using styrofoam takeout, especially the pizza places. So
how do we find out if someone gets a waiver to know if we should be disappointed in them still using it or not?
I don't know if that's made public.
Why wouldn't it be public?
It's a very good, right. I mean, because they're not in compliance. It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, how do people feel about that? We can ask that if we ask whether, you know, if they're not complying, we ask whether they have a waiver and they have to tell us, or they have to show it somewhere.
Well, I mean, that would be awesome if they had to put it on their wall to say, hey, you know, it's like a variance from a zoning or something like that. But just within our own, you know, discussions, you know, if Steve Mayo has a meeting and gives a waiver, can we just find out?
You know, I'll ask him whether we can post it somewhere. I don't see why not. It's all public information. And I don't want to shame people, but I think, you know, and as Melissa says, most of them really have thought through what their timing's going to be and all of that. I mean, and actually to Melissa's credit, it wasn't just like, I need a waiver, give me a waiver. Like it's a very specific form. Why do you need this?
Great.
You
awesome.
know, when do you think, because we wanted to gather data so that we could see whether we could see trends that were really affecting everybody or not. And I think Melissa characterized it well. So I'll ask Steve. Melissa, let's talk to Steve and Aaron about that and see.
Yeah, I mean, it's not clear whether Steve is going to, you know, allow all those waivers or not. Like, what is his criteria for allowing them or not? So that's kind of what I was wondering as well.
So to date, he hasn't issued them. So some folks are just not in compliance. Is that?
I don't know what he's on vacation this week. I don't know what he's issued and what he hasn't issued, to be quite honest.
Okay,
I mean, I think he's having, I don't think there's any blanket waivers going out. And there was some push, and we pushed back on saying, nope, January 1 is when we want this to start. I mean, this surge did not help us. Right, because certainly, and I empathize. Like, it's tough right now for businesses, but you know, it's also like now or never for climate too. So we're trying to balance the two. So yeah, so I don't know which ones have been given waivers and which ones haven't.
Yeah, Julie, I don't know if we want to set up a call with Aaron and Steve.
Yeah, I think for next week we should do that. Yeah. And I think that rather than kind of calling out the ones who are not doing it, I think our best strategy as individuals is to celebrate those who are. Yeah, we can't do it on our own. We can't do it on our town pages, but I'm telling you, when I walked into Shaw's last week and saw paper bags, is the happiest I've been in a long time. I've been shopping in Melrose for the last year. So I was so happy.
Yeah, and Farmland stopped using those styrofoam trays.
We are making progress. We shouldn't focus on the bad, but we don't want to let people just kind of, you know, there definitely is going to be some hiccups, which is to be expected. And frankly, the schools too. So we need to figure that out as well.
Yeah, we're a little ways off on the schools, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you had shared those concerns with us for a while, so you know that's known.
Yeah, and that was even before COVID. I shared some concerns, and then COVID hit, and you know everything went sideways. So, but like I said, there is no better leader in Danielle Collins. If this is going to get done in our schools, Danielle will make it happen, because she is totally focused on sustainability and the balance between needing to feed kids healthy meals and sustainability. She'll make it happen. It's just going to take longer than we would all like. But she's incredibly committed to this and wants to make it happen. She just, like she said to us, if she has to choose between feeding kids and sustainability, she's going to feed kids first. But sustainability is a close second in her mind. And so she'll make it happen. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. I do wonder, I just noticed that the Wakefield Community Neighborhood Association is meeting this week about their festival on the lake in June. And this was a pre-COVID idea that this committee had, but was to kind of spend a year demonstrating zero waste events or approaching events and trying to help them figure it out, not making it mandatory or anything, but just working together with events to lower the waste and to show they can be zero waste. So that might be something we need to revisit. And they were super open to working with us on it, this festival by the lake.
Well, and I know it's a little ways off, but in December, the last farmers market of the year, I did look around at the vendors that still use the plastic, and many of them are not local businesses, and we have to remind them that, with the exception of the produce bags, they are also under the policy, and so they do need to plan.
Yeah.
So,
yep. But I think we're making great progress, Melissa. Thank you for your leadership on it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Melissa, I don't know if you have another update on the waste reduction. I know I'm supposed to put those two together, but any follow-up on the Galvin or other areas that you're working on?
Yeah, so I've been working with Andy Bray and Tim O'Brien from the school facilities and Ann Watt from DPW on getting the recycling started at the Galvin. So we're pretty much ready to get that started. The only thing we need to figure out is some logistics of bringing the barrels down for pickup. But I think the biggest thing is education. It's not clear whether outsiders can enter the schools right now. Susie, I don't know if you have any information on that.
I mean, I thought we had volunteers at some levels being allowed back into the schools.
Yeah, I didn't know if that changed because of what's been going on.
You know what? I have no idea. It's a very good point. I would not be surprised if we've re-shut that down in the last 2 weeks, and just out of an abundance of caution. That I would hope that won't be that way for very long, right? It will get through this surge, and hopefully in a couple of weeks we can get back to that. But I haven't heard anything. I can follow up with with Doug and try and find out if we've shut down volunteers or not.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if we could go into the Galvin and help facilitate the start of the recycling, making sure, that everybody understands what can be recycled, where it needs to go, and that kind of thing. So that is, very close to starting. Just need to figure out a few things. And then the other thing we've been working on is getting the composting started again at the elementary schools. And so we just had to make sure that the Black Earth contract that we had was still active and that we had enough money on it. And we do. So we are hoping to start the composting March 1st at the elementary schools. Again, we need to just figure out a few logistics with Tim on, getting the barrels to go out and where they need to go and that kind of thing. But yeah, that is the plan. And I think Andy was gonna communicate those two things to the PTOs at their last meeting. So two very good things.
Right. Again, I mean, the elementaries, the first time we rolled it out, it took a fair amount of volunteer labor to help.
Yeah, that was the other thing was, education around that too. So those are the education's the biggest thing for the composting and the recycling.
Great. I was one of those volunteers for a while for the first time we did it, and it was really fun. And it's just, lunch is such a fun time in elementary school. So it's great. Thank you. Sean, I know you and Mary have been looking for time to meet. I don't know if you have an update on land use.
I can give a fast update in Mary's absence. So one thing we've been talking about right before the holidays, and just the holiday time kind of hit the pause button on some of this, was really trying to connect some of the conservation lands in the town with opportunities for awareness of and recreational use of green spaces in town. And so we are in the process of setting up a meeting with Rebecca Davis at the Conservation Commission to try to chat with them, find out more, not start from square one or reinvent the wheel, but find out more about the lands that fall under their auspices and where the opportunities for increased awareness and use might be. So that's something we really, and we've been chatting, and Mara's been part of these conversations in general about really that Wakefield doesn't seem to take full advantage of the opportunities to really share this information with the public compared to some surrounding towns. And I think some of us might actually go outside of town sometimes to go to places if they're not the places we're most familiar with, the lake, and related spaces. So really trying to find out more about the opportunities there and connecting and also publicizing some of the trails that do exist in town, as well as hopefully increasing interest in increasing the resources we have around that, not just for recreational use, but obviously also for making sure that those green spaces are preserved for the longer term. We've also had some conversations about a few crucial parcels that I won't go into detail right now because I don't have all the details available, but just that we wanted to kind of stick our noses into collectively to see what was going on with some of these things and make sure that there's opportunities for preserving some of these green spaces that might be at risk. Myra, anything that I neglected to mention that you recall from our last meeting, which I know was a few weeks before the holidays at this point?
No, I mean, I guess one thing, I think even for maybe, and Joe may know, as a citizen, not necessarily as an ESC member, but I've been trying to sort of figure out a little bit of who's responsible for trail maintenance. And I think that's another thing that you kind of alluded to it, Sean, but it seems like a little bit of a vulnerability. I was one who took a picture of some totally flooded out trail that we have in our conservation land. And it's sort of like the Boy Scouts do some, it's just a little bit hard to figure out. And so I do think it's worth, as we think going forward, who's responsible and who should be responsible and putting that as part of our plan for the community.
Yeah, and if there are some gaps or opportunities for increased utilization of volunteers and just those volunteer hours haven't been solicited, that's something that I thought our subcommittee and this committee in general could be involved in trying to promote awareness of those opportunities. And I don't know about all of you, but right now with so many types of things that I don't want to do in terms of the volunteer space because of COVID, getting outside and working on a trail would be something that I think maybe we can get increased interest in, as well as just making sure that connects with the awareness of the green spaces we do have in town and making sure those are there for the long term.
Great. Just so you're aware and so everyone is aware, the Master Plan Advisory Board, which I am a member of, is sort of going to have a number of public sessions. And I think the first public session, will be in March. And I think it's going to be thinking about green spaces. And again, it's around sort of taking the vision, which is really impressive document that is the Vision 2030 and making it more into a plan. And so I'll share details when I have it, but I welcome people to join that too in thinking about, what is the role of green space in the long term and thinking, in terms of investments or other components of the plan. I don't think we have student members. So anything else, Sean? That was great. Susie, anything you want to add? I know school committee has a lot of priorities right now and you may have dropped off.
No, I'm here.
Okay. Hi.
Hi. I am going to drop off as soon as I give this update though. So we voted on the fleet policy this week. So we got that done for green communities. There's probably, and we had a big update from SMMA about the high school project. I have not been very involved in that project, honestly. So I was looking forward to this update. I was pleasantly surprised I probably shouldn't be, but pleasantly surprised that in all of the options, when they kind of outline the options, that they call out, the ones that have good solar, like that face the right way for solar and right. So I think the Beasley Oval options aren't as good as if we built on Walsh Field. I was also pleasantly surprised when they presented kind of the criteria for how they're going to evaluate all of the options, because we have something like 12 or 16 options in front of us. Actually, not in front of school committee, in front of the kind of the working group, which is made up of the permanent building committee and people in the schools. Like, you know, there's kind of this new high school committee but it's mostly run by the permanent building committee. But the criteria had like an element of sustainability, like one of the categories of the criteria that's going to be used. So that all made me feel good about kind of where they're headed. You know, lots more work to do on that. That building won't get built for quite some time now, but we're making good progress, which is good. And I think I can't think of anything else. I did ask Doug if volunteers are allowed or whether it's been shut down, and his answer was yes. So I don't know if it was yes that they're allowed or yes it's been shut down. So I'm waiting for another answer on that. But Melissa, I'll get back to you on that. He did answer quickly. I just didn't get quite the answer I was looking for.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that's it from me. I can't. It's been a long time since I've been on this call, so I apologize. And we did do the work to get the kind of the waiver, the information in for the waiver that we knew that we needed to get done. So I think that's it.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Susie, could I ask you to stay for there's just one piece that might touch.
You want to go next, Tom?
Sure. I'll do the first part that might touch on for school committee. And it's got me thinking around the unfortunate bus fire that happened at the Woodville, which potentially offers an opportunity. And I'll put the link in. Something that we as utility are looking at is Beverly has a pilot program with an electric school bus. It's a public-private partnership, which is actually kind of unique. And they utilize the school bus in a vehicle to grid to do peaking capacity with the bus's battery over the summer. So they used it for like 50 hours to shave the peak. So I'll put the link into the chat here, and just something that, if that's something the school committee wants to look at, and I have to figure out how the official way, whether it's the utility or our board, you know, kind of says, hey, we're open and ready for this. But if, you know, as the school committee is looking at potentially replacing that or replacing any part of the fleet, that there are options out there that aren't necessarily capital purchase either. I found the public-private partnership pretty intriguing. So
it's definitely worth having Tim O'Brien take a look at.
Okay.
I think that fire was the morning after our school committee meeting, where we legitimately had just had the conversation about the fleet policy. And had it happened the day before, I think we would have had a very explicit conversation around, like, what do we do to replace that bus? It doesn't fall under that policy, we don't believe. But it sounds like, Tom, there's other options that we could consider.
Correct. Yeah, the bus itself wouldn't fall under the policy, but you know, it's just, there are options out there, and you know, the particular company partnered with the Beverly School Department and National Grid, and so, you know, obviously from a utility perspective, we're open and willing to, you know, explore opportunities like that. And I think it might actually get more traction with a municipal utility versus, you know, dealing with an ISO.
I will definitely, I'm going to pass it on to Tim right now.
And I'll send you guys something too. Mass Clean Energy Center came out with an expression of interest in electric buses this week as well. It's kind of pre-grant, but it's on the street right now. So I'll send that over.
Okay.
Yep. And that is actually another update of mine is around the MACP has put out, they're looking for proposals into their TAP, which is the Technical Assistance Program. I'll put that link in as well. That ties in both into EV sustainability. So any projects that we might be looking at either from a town or this body in itself is another avenue. They're looking for proposals. I got this email 2 days ago While the proposals themselves can be entered at any point in time of the year, they do kind of have a softer deadline of the January 31st. So I put the project link in there for the MACP. The next update is we are going, we have put forth a community solar project. It's actually being named in honor of Commissioner Ken Chase, who retired, was it 2 years ago? He served for 42 years on the Gas and Light Board. The community solar project, we are still finalizing what the kind of structure options are on how that will be offered out to the community. But community solar is coming. We just don't know what that kind of the structure looks like and how people can participate in that. January.
Tom, will those panels be located here in town, or are we
correct? Yep. The panels will be located at 480 North Ave, which is actually the Gas and Light building. So it will be on the Gas and Light rooftop. It will be a 126 kW. So we'll be, we're going to kind of figure out how to carve that up, what the shares look like, how folks would participate in that. So we're still working through kind of the, what does the community solar project look like? The project is actually split into two, again, lead by example. There is another part of the solar project that will power the Gas and Light building. So Gas and Light, we're going to lead by example. We're going to, as we ask others to make their buildings, net zero, we're leading the way with our own building as well.
Tom, are you putting the panels on the roof or covering the parking area?
On the roof.
Nice.
So, yeah, the total project is, I think it's 206 kW. So 126 going to the community solar, and then the other portion going to the Gas and Light building. January 26th at 6:30 p.m. Gas and Light is having a public strategic planning meeting. And as part of that, the board, it's open to the public, so anyone can join. So if you have input that you would like to see from a strategic planning perspective, feel free to join us. We're going to be fairly focused on electrification, both in heating, EV, codifying some of these things in building code. So, whether it's EV ready codes and electrification of air source heating for buildings. Those were my updates. Any questions?
Is there like a public post or something around the Gas and Light strategic planning?
Yes, there will be. It will be. We had hoped to do it as an in-person. It will be virtual. It'll be a Zoom meeting. Unfortunately.
What day is it again, Tom?
January 26th at 6:30 p.m. So it'll go out like any other board meeting, but I can certainly forward the link off to Myra to send out to this group.
Great.
Once it's generated.
Thank you.
That's the same night as the Safe Streets Working Group that I was going to mention at the end.
Oh no.
So it's okay. It's fine. It's different. But if people are interested in kind of biking and walking issues, that's more of a grassroots organization that is looking at kind of how to work biking and walking into the strategic plan, and maybe setting up some events like closing down some roads this summer and doing some fun events. So sorry, I digress, but I'll do my report quickly. I have very little. We did approve the Vision 2030 plan on vision statement, I guess it is, at our Monday night meeting. And it has a lot of environment, a lot of the things that we're talking about in here, really aspiring to less car transportation, aspiring to more open spaces, And so I think it's a really good guidance document as we go into the master plan and looking 10 years out. So if you haven't looked at that, it's worth just even looking at the vision statement. That's all I have for town council.
Great. And Joe.
Okay, so last but not least, Melissa touched a little bit on a couple of things I was going to mention, but really my group, we were kind of cautiously focusing on, the budget season and starting to think spring, kind of taking the weather as it comes. But a couple little tidbits as I was looking through some numbers this morning. So on the Black Earth pilot, so originally we started with 200 of the starter kits that we purchased to try to incentivize people into participating in that. We have 11 left. So we are almost all out of them. And Ann and I are working, we're gonna come back. I don't have all the details yet, but the goal is to get that number up to 500 because that's the next threshold for a price reduction. So we're gonna do another phase of that to see if this spring we can incentivize some more people into that. So far, so good. I haven't heard anything bad about it. And the folks over there at Black Earth have been fantastic anytime we had to call them. So that's been something that's really great. We're averaging just under 2 tons a week. And if you equate that into what it saved in the incinerator, we're almost into the tens of thousands of dollars. Another thing looking into, so I know the state of the world is kind of in flux, but I guess the silver lining for me this afternoon was to notice when the pandemic hit, one of the things we were worried about is when everybody was driven home, the refuse and stuff at the curbside kind of took a little bit of a jump. But looking at the first half of the year, for fiscal 22 versus fiscal 21, we're actually down 202 tons of refuse. And more exciting, I guess, is that we're up 26 tons in recycling. So it seems like the scales are starting to balance again, and we might be heading in a good direction. Little tough to tell because of the pandemic effect. I think some of it's related to that, but I'm really hoping that some of the diversion things are really starting to take hold and benefit us both in the sustainability sense, but then also in a financial sense too. So as we go through meetings in February and March, both Ann and I will be in and out, and we'll have some more for everybody to report. But that's kind of where we're at for now. So we're hoping it's warm, snow-free, and the spring is on its way.
Joe, I had a question about cardboard recycling. So, during the yard pit season, if you call it that, we had a great place where we could send people, between recycling periods.
Yep.
What are the opportunities when the pits closed in the winter? Is there a way for us to have that resource available? Because I certainly, right after Christmas, saw so much cardboard, on curbs.
That's the trouble with the whole thing. So believe it or not, that area, you have that little window after the first week of December to basically March to get everything everybody brought in there over, the spring, summer, and fall, and move it out to make room for the next year. So it gets really busy. And the other thing that we have going on in there is we don't have any staff in there at the moment. So right now we have an influx of tractor trailers in and out all day long. They're hauling Christmas trees in and out of there. So to keep that in there and invite the public to be in and out, tractor trailers and someone coming to drop off that cardboard isn't exactly a great safety mix. We thought about putting it in our yard, but that gets just as congested too. So we really don't have a great alternative for, December, January, and February. But that's one of the things we're trying to identify a place where that can sit, at least for the winter months, to continue that convenience. So let's say stay tuned. I know that's not an awesome answer, but it's something that we're working on to cross off the bucket list for sure.
It's honest. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately.
Joe, I had a question about the Christmas tree pickup.
Sure.
Has there been delays in that? Because I noticed that my street didn't get picked up this
Me
past
too.
week. Okay.
No, I would say leave it out there. So our staff does that during the day. Obviously, it's been a little bit cold. We lost a little bit of time last week with the snow, but as long as it's out on the curb, I know if your recycling day was today and they weren't out there today, they'll be by. We won't let any of it get missed. So
my recycling was Monday.
Me too.
Still won't get missed, I promise.
Okay.
And And Joe, what happens to the Christmas trees after you pick them up? Are they ground up and compost, or what?
We actually chip them up, and a pig farm takes them to feed their goats, or to do whatever they do with them. I don't. Maybe they use them for odor control, but we have somebody that's taken them for way longer than I've been employed here.
Joe, I was just going to comment on the discussion about the reduction in waste, right? And at the beginning of COVID, like everybody was just like going through their house and clearing stuff out. I suspect that most people on this call are well aware of the phenomenon of this kind of buy now Facebook page. And if you're not, it's a really kind of interesting take on the recycle. So there is this recycle Facebook page where whoever claims the thing first gets it first. Mm-hmm. But this concept of buy now allows
buy nothing. Susie,
buy nothing. Sorry, not buy now. Yeah, buy nothing. Buy nothing. Sorry, it would be helpful if I got the name right. Buy nothing, and I believe it's a national movement, but like lots of communities kind of put them in place, and you post things that you want to get rid of, and people kind of put their name in, and you have 24 hours to claim it, and then the person kind of chooses who they want to give it to, and you can choose it. There's no like real rules like there are on the recycle page, and that thing has taken on a life of its own in a way that is just like the amount of swapping of stuff that goes on that page is just amazing. And where I think our yard sale page people used to sell stuff all the time. Like people are just giving shit away, right? Like they don't expect to get money for it anymore. They just want it out of their house, and they want somebody who's going to appreciate it, and they want somebody who's going to show up and pick it up. So I don't know that necessarily has anything to do with kind of the reduction, but I do think there is like this underlying culture of reuse and upcycling and just like giving stuff to people who think that they might need what you don't need any longer. Mm-hmm. That I suspect that some of that has helped with kind of reducing the amount of waste that you see making its way into the trash.
Totally. I feel like if you go back and look at the numbers, there are a couple of years where I'd show you what the town's tonnages were at the incinerator, and pretty much guarantee that all of it came to the town. Now, all these avenues have just opened channels that, make the whole picture so much brighter.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, but for me personally, the buy nothing is the first pay. I'm like, I even stuff that potentially you're like, this is trash. There's actually a phenomenon where a hot commodity literally is dryer lint. People are looking for dryer lint. There's for all sorts of stuff. It's just, so what you might think is trash, you post, and there are people that will consume it and upcycle it and reuse it. So it is a great place to push. And I don't know if we as a committee can kind of put together, here are some resources to reuse and upcycle before you even get to the recycling portion, and then the refuse part of the life cycle of that object.
Last year around Earth Day, when we were doing that sort of series of posts, like, do you know what Earth Day is every day in our town? I talked to Deb Butler, who is one of the facilitators of that site, and she gave me the statistics of just the posts, and it is phenomenal. And I know it's grown a lot since then. It's phenomenal. You see, like clothes are moving around, and even like moving material. I mean, it is really remarkable, and it's one of my favorites because people are just kind and funny, and like it is joyful.
It is.
I like the fact that people use something and then they said, I got that from the site. I used it for whatever I needed, and now it's ready for the next home. So it's it's re-gifting on multiple cases. And
I do like the idea of us helping promote that. Mm-hmm. That there's a puzzle swap, there's a book swap. right? Like there are people who are small groups. The book swap, I don't know how big that is, and the puzzle swap cracks me up, right? So you're just moving puzzles around Wakefield when and that's still going on. So I love the the idea of kind of making people aware in the community that to know that kind of stuff is going on. Like you said, Tom, before you even get to recycle, like you don't even have like, this is upcycling. There's other people who want your stuff.
I wonder about sort of bringing our back to sort of the May 14th event. If we reach out to the organizers of some of those pages, there's a book swap page too, which also, we could, think about having little like booths or something where some of those community groups are represented.
Yep. Definitely.
All right. Well, that was awesome, Joe. Thank you. I get some of us, may eventually, as we get to the tens of thousands of dollars saved, start to say, what's the threshold or what's the criteria for the the town subsidizing composting a little bit. Although we certainly do appreciate your efforts to help get the numbers up.
I get to tell you, we were talking earlier about what this group does, what the mission is. I can tell you that idea, the nucleus of that started here. This group, when we did our last trash and recycling RFP, we threw literally everything but the kitchen sink at the people that were interested in that. The cardboard drop off came out of that. So, from our standpoint here at Public Works, the brainstorming here is awesome. We just take it out and see if, there's a benefit to it that we can bring back. So I would say, the more ideas, the better. Whatever we can deliver, we're going to keep trying.
Love it.
So thank you.
All right. On that uplifting note, we're scheduled for our next meeting on February 10th. If that is a challenge to anyone, just let me know. Otherwise, I think we're sticking with the second Thursday of the month. Any other matters not anticipated? This was a long meeting, so thanks for sticking with us.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Sorry, who was that? I heard it.
Julie.
Thank you. Excellent.
All right, Joe, you're up.
Aye.
Dan?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Susie?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Julie?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Have a great night.